Okay, so you're ready to deep dive with us. This time we're taking on something a lot of you out there have asked about, speaking English easily. And actually, your timing is perfect because, get this, someone just sent us this really cool piece from, I think it's called Learn English with AI.
Yeah, that's the one.
And honestly, some of their tips were so out there, like even I was surprised. So get ready for some genuinely useful stuff I think you're going to love.
It's really refreshing, actually. It's not just the same old grammar rules and drills. They get that to speak confidently, you need more than just knowing the textbook stuff. You need, like, a mix of classic techniques plus some, creative out-of-the-box thinking. And that's exactly what this source does. It's pretty
Yeah.
clever.
Yeah. It's like they understand the mental blocks people have, for example, they start with this idea of building a strong foundation.
Right. Basics are important.
Exactly. But it's not just about the typical grammar stuff. They go beyond that and really encourage mastering common phrases. Think, greetings, simple questions, like the things you'd actually use every day in real conversations.
It's totally about building fluency from the ground up, like brick by brick. You know what I found really interesting, though?
What's that?
It's how they tie pronunciation into that foundational phase. It's not an afterthought like, oh yeah, work on that later, but from day one. And they even recommend some cool tools for it, like Forvo. Have you heard of that
I
one?
haven't actually.
So with Forvo, you can literally hear native speakers pronounce any word.
Oh, wow. That's got to be useful because they're right when they say that even small differences in pronunciation can, make or break how well people understand you.
Exactly. You might have the vocab down, but if it's coming out all garbled, then it's like, what's the point?
Uh-huh. Totally.
And to really fine tune your sounds, they suggest, get this, tongue twisters.
No way. She sells seashells by the seashore.
The very same. We usually think of them as, just a fun way to play with words, but those things actually train your mouth muscles for clearer speech. It's like a workout for your tongue, honestly.
Okay, that is a great analogy. I'm picturing a tongue doing squats at the gym now.
Uh-huh. Exactly.
But really, that's actually such a clever way to make pronunciation practice less scary.
Yeah.
And speaking of making things less scary, their approach to vocab building, oh my gosh, it's genius. They say to just learn 10 to 15 new words each day.
Yeah. It's so much more manageable than what we usually try to do, right? Like cramming in a million words at once and then poof, gone from our brains.
Oh, I've been there. It's like trying to drink from a fire hose, like it's just too much all at once. This way, though, much more, I don't know, sustainable. Didn't they also say something about Anki flashcards? I feel like I've heard those are great for memorizing stuff.
Yeah, they did. And it makes so much sense. You're adding new words consistently, reinforcing them, and actually using them, making them a real part of your vocabulary.
It's like quality over quantity, for sure.
100%. And that same philosophy actually carries over into their section on immersion, which is where things get really, really interesting. It's all about surrounding yourself with the language as much as possible.
Okay, this is where I get excited. Remember how I told you about watching TV shows with subtitles and then gradually weaning myself off of them?
Oh, yeah, you were doing that for a while.
Well, they suggest that too, but they go even further and say to actually mimic the characters. Pay attention to their tone, their rhythm, even their body language.
Whoa. It's like acting class for language learning. You're not just passively absorbing, but actively embodying the language, which honestly can make a huge difference in how fast you learn.
I agree. And it's just more fun that way, too.
Yeah.
It's like you're trying on different characters and trying out different ways of speaking.
Makes it way less boring, that's for sure.
And speaking of fun, they're also big on music and podcasts. Even if you're just passively listening, it can train your ear to pick up on all those little nuances of pronunciation and intonation.
It's true. Without even realizing it, you're being immersed in the soundscape of the language, and your brain starts to decode all those patterns and rhythms.
Yeah. Suddenly you're understanding spoken English way easier. Okay, get ready for this next one because this is where they get really innovative. They say, you ready for this? Switch your phone and all your gadgets to English.
Seriously?
Seriously.
Yeah.
And they even suggest labeling things around your house in English, too. Like you're surrounded by the language, even when you're just doing your everyday stuff.
Yeah.
Pretty hardcore, right?
It's definitely a commitment. I mean, it could be super effective, but I also wonder about, those moments when you're trying to do something quickly on your phone and you can't, for the life of you, remember the English word for it.
Yeah. That's a good point. It probably depends a lot on like your personality and your learning style. Some people might thrive in that kind of constant immersion, but others, it might just be too much. But hey, even if you don't go all in on that one, I think the takeaway is still like find ways to fit English into your daily life. Even small things can make a difference.
Totally. And speaking of fitting English in, their section on daily practice is full of good stuff. One that really caught my eye was this idea of, get this, talking to yourself in English.
I know. It sounds kind of crazy at first, but it's actually really cool. They suggest like narrating your day, describing what you're doing, or even just like thinking out loud in English.
It's like giving yourself a private English lesson, but no one has to know you're doing it.
Exactly. And it helps you get comfortable with the flow of the language without stressing about like perfect grammar or making mistakes.
Oh, for sure. It's a safe space to practice. Have you ever tried that, by the way? Talking to yourself, I mean.
Oh, totally. I felt a little weird at first, not gonna lie, but then I started to notice that I was actually thinking in English more often, even when I wasn't like actively practicing.
That's amazing. It's like you're training your brain to think in English, which is huge for speaking fluently.
Mhm.
And, if you're feeling ready to take your practice up a notch, they also recommend checking out language exchange programs and like online communities.
Yes. This is where technology really comes in handy. There are platforms out there like Tandem and HelloTalk that connect you with like native English speakers from all over the world so you can actually practice in real time. Have you ever tried any of those?
I've dabbled in a few, yeah. It's amazing how easy they make it to connect with people. And you can even find partners who share your interests, so it becomes more than just a language exchange. It's like, making friends and learning about their culture too.
That's so cool. It's like having a conversation partner right in your pocket.
Oh.
And they brought up another interesting technique called shadowing. So basically, you listen to a native English speaker and then repeat right after them, mimicking like their tone, their accent, their pace, everything.
It's like you're their vocal shadow trying to match them perfectly.
Right. I've heard actors use this to perfect accents, so it makes sense that it would work for language learning too.
Makes total sense. It helps you internalize that natural rhythm and intonation, which can be so tricky to get from just textbooks.
Definitely. And you know what else can be tricky? Dealing with the fear of making mistakes. I think that holds a lot of people back.
Oh, tell me about it.
Hmm.
It can be so paralyzing, like you're afraid to even open your mouth.
Right? I used to be terrified of making mistakes, and it honestly stopped me from speaking at all. But the source makes a really good point. They say, you know, everyone makes mistakes,
Oh.
even native English speakers. It's just part of the learning process.
It's so true. It's about shifting your focus from being perfect to just communicating, getting your message across, even if it's not grammatically flawless. And honestly, a lot of the time, making those mistakes is actually how we learn and improve.
That's such a good point. They also recommend practicing with a supportive friend or family member, someone who can offer encouragement and, gentle feedback.
Having someone to practice with, even if it's just one person, can make such a big difference in how confident you feel. Oh, and they also suggest recording yourself speaking English.
Oh, yeah. That can be really insightful. You might not realize you're making certain pronunciation errors or using like incorrect grammar until you hear yourself back.
And tracking your progress over time, that can be so motivating. Like, wow, I've actually come a long way.
Totally. Okay, tech lovers, this next section is for you. The source goes all in on the huge amount of tools and resources out there for language learners, and let me tell you, it's kind of mind-blowing.
It's like having a whole language learning toolbox right there at your fingertips. And they highlight some of the most popular apps like Duolingo, Babbel, SpeakPal.
Yeah, those are the big ones.
They're all about getting you speaking with interactive exercises, personalized feedback, even speech recognition tech.
I've tried a few of them, and they can be surprisingly fun, like you're playing a game while you learn.
And because they're on your phone, you can literally practice anywhere, anytime.
Exactly. But they don't stop at apps. They also recommend checking out YouTube channels that are all about English learning. Have you watched any of those?
Oh, absolutely. There are some incredible channels out there with engaging videos, tips from experts, even real-life conversations. Actually, speaking of Learn English with AI, the source we're deep diving into today, they have their own channel too.
Oh, that's right.
It's full of helpful content. Definitely worth checking out.
It's like getting bonus material.
Yeah.
And of course, we can't forget the classics, books, and audiobooks.
Always a good choice.
They recommend starting with simple books, practicing reading aloud, and then gradually leveling up to more challenging stuff.
Reading aloud is such a powerful way to improve pronunciation and fluency. It forces you to really pay attention to each word and how it sounds.
And with audiobooks, you get to listen to native English speakers and try to copy their pronunciation and intonation. It's like having a personal coach right there in your ear. Okay, so what does this all mean for you? We've covered a lot today. Building that strong foundation, immersing yourself in the language, making practice a habit, facing those fears head on, and of course, using all those amazing tools and technology that are out there.
It's like a whole package deal, right? They're not just giving you information, but like a full toolkit. And they encourage you to find the techniques that, speak to you, the ones that fit your learning style. It's about making it personal.
It's like a buffet of language learning strategies, and you get to build your perfect plate. The key, though, like they said, is consistency. Choose one or two things that you enjoy and just make them a part of your daily routine. Even if it's just a little bit each day, it adds up.
It's about making English a part of your life, not just something you're studying separately.
I love that. And speaking of making English a part of your life, remember that tip about changing your phone settings to English? Well, they take it even further. If you're feeling really adventurous, they say, travel to an English-speaking country.
Wow, talk about immersion. That would be, amazing, but also kind of scary, right?
Right, like throwing yourself into the deep end. But oh
Yeah.
my gosh, the things you would learn, ordering food, asking for directions, like
Yeah.
having real conversations with people, all in English. It'd be like a crash course in, actually using the language.
Not to mention all the cool cultural experiences you'd have, the people you'd meet. You'd have to figure out all kinds of unexpected situations. It's like combining language learning with an adventure.
Totally.
Hmm.
But even if, like, hopping on a plane isn't in the cards right now, they make a really good point. It's about embracing the journey, no matter where you are in your language learning. It's about celebrating those little wins along the way.
I love that. Every conversation, every new word you learn, every time you express yourself in English, even if it's not perfect, it's a step forward. And it's important to recognize those wins and celebrate them, even the small ones.
Be kind to yourself. You're doing great. And remember, you don't have to do this alone. There are so many resources out there, communities, people who are going through the same thing.
Like Learn English with AI. They've built this awesome space for learners, and their stuff is just so, I don't know, approachable and encouraging.
Yeah, it's like they get it. They understand the ups and downs of language learning, and they're there to help you along the way. So as we wrap up this deep dive, let's bring it back to you. What part of speaking English are you most excited to improve?
Out of everything we talked about today, what really clicked for you? What got you fired up and ready to practice?
Take a minute. Think about your goals and which of these strategies you can actually start using today. Even a small step can make a big difference over time.
And remember, learning a language should be fun. Don't be afraid to try things out, experiment, find what works for you.
So true. It shouldn't feel like a chore. It should be exciting, an adventure. And who knows, maybe someday you'll be the one inspiring other people with your English-speaking journey.
Until then, we're rooting for you. Keep practicing, keep exploring, keep believing in yourself.
And hey, if you ever have questions or if you just want to share your progress, come find us on social media or through our website. We always love hearing from you guys.
Absolutely. Happy learning, everyone.